film photography is a form of photography like no other. There is something just so wonderful about the hobby, compared to photography of the digital kind. In this modern day and age, we all have high quality cameras in our pockets that can take photos of anything and produce a copy of it for instant viewing. Unlike film photography, where you must wait typically days for the film to be developed. Which may seem like a con for this form of photography, but I'd actually argue it plays a role in the wonder of the hobby. Now, what makes film photography so wonderful? And why should you pick it up? Well, that is exactly what I intend to explain. The first factor in the wonder of film photography is the feel. Film has a different look compared to shooting on digital. From the grain, to the colors, to the halation, to the specks of dust that can get on the image. These could be called imperfections, but it's these imperfections that create the unique aesthetic of shooting on film. And it's not just the look of film that's responsible for the feel. There's also another factor in this, which is the romantic aspect of it. The feel of film images comes from an internal romanticization. For the past 20 years, digital cameras have outsold film cameras, meaning obviously that photos that were dominantly shot on film are old. They're old photos. And as a result, the look of film is associated with a romantic feeling. It's nostalgic. Even if you aren't old enough to remember the time where film photography dominated, thanks to the internet, and spreading of aesthetics, and romanticization, you can still put yourself in the shoes of a person living back then, and understand the nostalgia. It's possible to feel romance for a time you've never experienced, and that's why film photography is becoming popular again. The ability to romanticize things, for your brain to make sentimental connections from things, is the cause for the hype behind film photography. Besides the look of film, the process behind shooting film is a huge factor in why you should pick it up. We have phones in our pockets which can capture photos instantly. With the storage space on these phones, you could take a practically unlimited amount of phone photos on a whim, usually without having to worry about running out. And because of that, the process behind shooting on film is truly special. Buying film, especially a pretty looking film, from a good film brand, costs money. The cost factor of shooting on film motivates you to make your shots count. You can take tens of thousands of phone photos or hundreds of high-quality digital camera photos, but most film rolls are usually limited to a mere 32 full frames. The cost factor for a roll makes the amount of film photos you have, the amount of photos you can take with this specific aesthetic, much more limited. You might be wondering, well, why would I spend money for less photos when I can take so many photos on my phone? For one, please refer to the first point in this video, the feel. And for two, it's about loving the process, and willingly accepting the limit. The photo limit makes it a challenge, and the limited amount of film photos you can have makes them feel more valuable. If you somehow had a magic film roll that never ran out of film photos, and you could take an unlimited amount like you can with a phone, it just wouldn't feel valuable or important. You wouldn't be motivated to make it count if you knew you had a million tries. When you have limited film, that costs money. You're more motivated to hone in and focus on getting a good shot. And that focus on getting the right shot makes the outcome better. And as you keep doing this, you'll get better and better at taking photos, and get really engrossed in it. For me, it became an obsession, which was a good thing because I really liked the hobby. But also a bad thing because I deadass spent all my savings from my job on film, so yeah, The other big part of the process is delayed gratification. When shooting digitally, the photo is taken with digital sensors and stored on the device, which allows you to have an instant look at the photo you just took, right after taking it. When shooting on film, you can't see the result until you first finish shooting the entire roll, which would be time consuming if you're trying to make every shot count, and second, get it developed either by buying the chemicals and doing it all yourself, which will take 20 minutes at the very least, minus drying, which will take longer, or paying a lab to do it for you, which can take days or weeks. This is the opposite of instant gratification. It's delayed gratification. And waiting that time to see how your photo turned out is such a rewarding experience. The pride you get from putting effort into the shot and seeing that it turned out well is a wonderful feeling that I hope you will feel if you give this hobby a shot. Having a copy of a film photo just feels so much more special, important, and valuable to me than the photos I take on my phone.
We could easily agree that the future is here, that film is cumbersome and imperfect and difficult to transport and prone to wear and decay, and that it's time to forget the past and say goodbye. Really, that could be easily done. Too easily. Would anyone dream of telling a young artist to throw away their paints and canvases because iPads are so much easier to carry? Of course not.
Greta Gerwig, the director of Barbie and Lady Bird, had comments to make on the authenticity of film as well.
All of it. I do kind of have a distaste of things that pretend to be something else.
Okay.
Like on an iPhone camera, they have all of these applications where you can take a picture and then you can make it look like Polaroid or something else. And I think I have a natural inclination to say, yes, but it's not a Polaroid. And I think that there's something just as authentic about digital, but I think it should be honest about the fact that it's digital.
There's a website called Lomography, which is dedicated to people uploading their film photos. There is so much community on this site, sharing of love for the craft, and film unites all the users of this website, me included. If you go onto this site, you'll see the love everyone puts into their photos, and the specifics included with each photo, what camera is used, what time of day it is, what film is used. There is a film photography community that is alive. Film is harder to practically work with than digital. This is a fact. But the fact that it's favored by film directors such as Christopher Nolan, is still used today, and has a huge community, is proof of the fact that shooting on film is not without appeal. Yes, it's practically hard to work with, but film photographers know that. We accept that, because it does not take away from the fun, the feel, the romance, the rewarding aspect of it. Now all that being said, here are some of my tips on getting into the hobby. Film cameras are kind of damn expensive. I was lucky enough to find mine in a thrift store, so it was cheap. But if you can't afford a film camera, I absolutely recommend trying out a disposable camera. These are cheap as hell compared to normal film cameras, and they still take pretty pictures. By shooting with a disposable camera, you'll get the experience of shooting on film without having to spend much on a camera. You'll get the rewarding feeling of getting your film back, and you'll get to see how it looks. From there, you can decide whether you like it enough to continue trying it out, and down the line, you can get a camera. Also, make sure to use the flash on disposable cameras when it's dark or dim, because those cameras don't have adjustable exposure settings. A cheap point-and-shoot camera I'd recommend is the Kodak Ektar H35. I love this camera. It costs only $50, and it's a really neat camera. It's also half-frame, so you can take twice as many photos per roll as a full-frame camera. Do research on exposure, because this is essential for taking film photos. Learn what the terms ISO, aperture, and shutter speed mean. Definitely do some research on which film to buy. I highly recommend using the site Lomography and searching for the film you're considering buying to see the many photos people have taken with that film as an example of how it looks. Lastly, be mindful of the money. Like I said earlier, if you get obsessed with this, you can lose a ton of money, so just really try to consider how you're spending it. I was blinded by my love for film photography, so I didn't pay attention to this or process it, so don't make my mistake. Film photography is honestly an expensive hobby, and this is a totally valid deterrent from the hobby. In spite of everything I've said to you about how great shooting on film is and how you should try it out, it only applies if you can afford it. I wouldn't recommend this hobby if you can't afford it. Obviously, I don't want to make you broke. If you can get behind a concept of doing something in an unconventional way, for sentimental reasons, shooting on film is such a stimulating, romantic, and wonderful hobby.